Welcome back to Blurred Summits Dissected. Today we are going to be dissecting the interview with Michael Bungay Stanier about his new book, How to Begin, goal setting, all that good stuff. Hudson here interviewed him.
Yeah, I think it was quite a good episode. So if you hear some cool themes and thoughts from this one, you want to go check it out. Link will be in the description or at the end of this video. You can click on it. It'll be at the end there, and then you can see in there.
Biggest thing that you got from the interview?
Basically for me, it actually made me rethink some stuff personally.
Yeah.
Like even when I read the book, I was like, maybe I cheated myself in a couple of spots. So it's really eye-opening.
Like when you were reading the book, you were lying to yourself.
Potentially, yeah. Where I thought I was in the right spot, but maybe tricking myself, making me think, and then he really made me doubt. I'm like,
What was it? What was it that, like, what did he say? What was in the book? What was it that was like, oh, wait a minute?
Well, for me, it was maybe reinterpreting some of the things I thought in the book. I interpreted it one way. And then one of the sections, I can't remember which one, I put something down. And he said, that's actually not in that section. That's a different one. So something that I thought made one of those his three pillars.
Okay, so what were the three pillars in the book?
The three pillars in the book were thrilling, daunting, and important. And I'm trying to think. I think it might have been the important one that I put under. Or no, it was thrilling. I put under a different section. So in the interview, he like doubts it, right? And then I redo it and switch it up. So yeah, that was kind of that one section that I was like, something that I thought was a strong pillar might not be as strong as it used to be there. But who knows, right? We'll see with time.
Yeah.
So from the outside perspective, what was something from the interview that you took away as something that was pretty strong and important out of it?
There was, he gave the biggest thing that I actually got from the interview was the last question that we asked. We always ask the guests the blurred summit or the summit question, right?
Yeah.
And his answer for the summit question was, his answer, I have it written down right here.
It was basically that there were multiple summits.
Yeah, and he said, which summit am I climbing? What's the mountain? And am I at the right mountain? Right? He said, before you just start going and like just climbing for no apparent reason, are you actually on the right summit?
Well, what he was talking about, you could be in the foothills and there's all these ones, right? Mm-hmm. You could climb up the wrong one.
Right?
Easily.
He said, make sure you're climbing up the right mountain, or else, let's say you're halfway up the mountain, you're even at the top of the mountain, you realize, damn, I actually climbed the wrong mountain. That would suck, right? Yeah. Now, this is all metaphorical. We're talking like life. You know what I'm saying? Like,
so pick the right things, right? But then he was also like, there's multiple different mountains, right? Mm-hmm. There's one for your career and one for your legacy. Yeah. That's a career, work, school, that type of stuff. And then the other legacy is things outside of that.
Yeah, like how do you want to be remembered, like as a person?
Because it's tough if you're climbing one mountain that has both of those on it, right? You can't really do that. It's almost like you have two separate personalities, one for work, one for legacy stuff, right? It's hard to have it be the exact same.
Yeah,
path.
yeah. Unless that is the truth, like unless your legacy really is your work, I think that like it's a very few percentage of people that want that. Yeah. I think that we're talking about your like Elon Musks of the world. Like I think Elon Musk, his legacy is his career. Yeah. Right.
But do you think it started out like that? When he started, did he intend on his career to be his legacy?
Yeah, because like
at PayPal, did he think PayPal was going to be his legacy?
Well, I don't know if PayPal was his like legacy work. Like I think SpaceX and Tesla are. Yeah. I don't see him like I think that he's going to be doing that for the rest of his life. Like that's his, Berkshire Hathaway, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but then again, I still wouldn't consider that legacy. You consider the company, but necessarily outside of work.
Yeah, like
what else? What else did they do?
That's true. Like I guess his legacy would be, a person who innovated, like who tried to solve problems in different ways. Like that would kind of be his legacy versus, maybe his individual career. It's like it's not necessarily tied down to a single company, but it's like a very, very good point. So I really like that from the interview. And then like, something else that he said was, or actually, you say something. I don't want to say a second thing right now.
Well, it was basically when he said we unlock our greatness by working on the hard things, right?
Right.
Again, written down because it's been a couple of days since the interview, so we had to go back at what we talked about there. But right, like to really understand your greatness, you really need to grind out some of these difficult things, right? You never really know where you're at until you test yourself. And that's when you be like, ooh, that's where my greatness is.
Yeah. You know, and that quote reminded me of this fantastic book by Ryan Holiday. And he wrote a book on stoicism, but the title of the book, and you'll kind of get what the book is about. The book is called The Obstacle is the Way. Mm-hmm. Right? So really, really nice book. But basically the entire premise of the book is that you need to go head on at the hard thing, at the obstacle that's in front of you. Mm-hmm. That's where you're going to find meaning and develop a sense of pride and self-esteem and confidence and all that kind of good stuff that we're all looking for, you know?
Well, yeah, all it is, right, is that obstacle tells you the greatness.
Yeah.
That obstacle reveals it to you, like you quoted. But if you don't go around that obstacle, how are you going to know what's behind it? And
I think that when you go through it too, you have a greater sense of self-respect. Mm-hmm. Because you're like, okay, you know what? I know I went through this difficult thing that I wasn't 100% sure on. So you begin to believe in yourself a little bit more, take on bigger obstacles. Easier said than done, though. You know what I'm saying? Easier said than done. That's all. Yeah, right.
You'll go through how many obstacles and not necessarily find something. You get that one. Yeah, well, and then reveals it all, right? It could just be this chain of obstacles where behind that obstacle is another obstacle, and that obstacle is your greatness. But behind that one, there's
Yeah, like, I think that, like, seriously, the bigger that the obstacle is, the more likely you are to find a lesson behind it. Mm-hmm. Like, I think if it's a small obstacle, it's a little bit of a challenge. You've been through something similar. It's kind of wishy-washy, whatever. Then you might learn a little something, but you won't learn a lot. Like, you're going to learn a lot, you know, when you go through the hurricane. You know what I'm saying?
So what type of things would be that greatness that people might get out on the other side of these obstacles?
Literally I don't know.
Anything, right?
I have no idea.
Anything from personality to opportunity to what?
Yeah. I think the biggest thing you get is it's all kind of a refined internal foundation, right? So those things, like I said, self-confidence, self-respect, self-esteem, you know, maybe self-awareness, insight into the world, humility, right? You know what I'm saying? You might get some humility, but those are all very valuable lessons to learn that you can't necessarily get off a book or get from somebody telling you. You know, how many times have people told us, you know, just be confident, just be humble, just be whatever, until you have an event that forces you to do those things. Mm-hmm. I think that, you know, it's hard to do it.
How often is it you probably get one of these lessons or you find your greatness, but you don't actually realize it, right? Yeah. Could be some subtle internal thing that you'll have. You get it for a long amount of time, and until you do some introspection, you'll never realize you had it, right?
Yeah, and you need to, like, integrate it. Right.
But you could integrate it without actually knowing it, right? Something could happen. You start doing something that you don't realize it.
Like you just continue on with the habit
and then
afterwards.
It ends up being something special without even realizing it.
Yeah, most definitely. Like, I think it's harder for it to be because, you know, for example, you know, I was listening to this podcast and they were talking about how this person went off to like this retreat, and during this retreat, they like became rejuvenated and they felt like great and everything. And they said, you know what? I'm changing my life. Like when I come back, I'm going to be like present. I'm going to be attentive. I'm going to do all these things that I always said I was going to do. Mm-hmm. And they did that for like the first few days, but then they reverted back to being their old self. Mm-hmm. And they said what they realized that they had to do is they had to kind of like intentionally try to integrate those things and force those things to be habits in their early stages until they became a part of themselves, right? Mm-hmm.
I think something, I guess jumping off of that, Michael, you posted something on his Instagram actually about habits.
Oh, yeah?
Just after our interview, and it was something.
It was probably
do you know where the 21-day habit thing came from?
No, I have no idea.
It was something for plastic surgery for how long it would take for someone to get used to their nose, to their new nose.
Oh, okay.
And then that's where it jumped off of into this 21 days makes a habit. And he's like, that's BS. That's not true. So realistically, I think he said it was something like 56 days for something to become a habit.
Okay.
So in reality, it takes way longer than what it is. And now this saying that came off of people just getting used to their plastic surgery turned into what people think of for habits.
That's
which I think is kind of strange, and there's misconception that it's easier than it actually is, right? Because you're 21 days, that's not even halfway there.
Yeah.
That's not even halfway to where you're truly at a habit, right?
And like I think what happens when the false expectation is set, like, you know, just struggle for those 21 days, then you'll be good to go. I think what it does is that when people do that and then they're not successful, they actually hurt their self-esteem. They lose respect for themselves. But in reality, they were sold something that was a false premise to begin with, right? I feel like you guys talked about it in the interview as well.
We talked about like the sprints, right? Is that what you're going to get at?
Not the sprints, but like the idea about how like being too hard on ourselves.
Oh yeah, we're being too hard on yourself. Really, you just destroy yourself before.
Yeah,
you give yourself
exactly,
a chance,
right? So it's like you do have to have that level of self-empathy to a certain degree, right? Like, listen, the first time you try to do a new habit might not work out, might not, but that's okay, right?
Well, yeah, that's why
just go back and try
little
it again.
sprints, the way he said, right? Little sprint, because it's a bunch of little sprints. I think if you look at it as this long marathon, you're more likely to fail it. What's easier, running a 100-meter dash or running for 100 meters or 42 kilometers?
Yeah.
Doing those, right? So if you just look at these things as these little 100-meter dashes and then you look back and say, hey, look how far I got.
Yeah.
And then you just keep doing that and keep doing that. It's crazy how much distance you can do by doing these little bursts.
Well, that's a classic hiking analogy, right? It's like you don't look at the top of the mountain. You just kind of start taking one step at a time, looking in front of you.
You mean if you're looking up at the top, it looks like you're making no distance, but then you look down and it's like, holy cow, look how far I came.
Right?
Yeah.
And then before you know it, you're like, oh, what the heck? Like, I'm way higher than I thought I was, you know? And all you have to kind of focus on was just in the moment.
It's the perspective, right? People, obviously, if you can do those little sprints consistently, right? Like I talked about short-term or long-term consistency over short-term intensity.
Yeah.
If you can do that short-term intensity
consistently
for long-term consistency,
yeah,
that's the best way to success, right? Because if you kind of, I guess the way that you start slow, are you really going to catch your feet, or are you going to stumble because you're going so slow? I feel like if you're going slow, you're more likely to or not succeed. Whereas if you hit the ground running like it would be at the end, you're more likely, I think, to be able to sustain it, right? Because if you try to ease yourself in, you're more likely to back off than if you, right? Like getting into a pool, you take a foot in, ooh, it's cold. You step out, take a whole cannonball into the pool.
Yeah,
you'll just
or
hang out and do it. Like, I'm in already. So be it, right?
Yeah, and like, you know, training principles. If you actually look at, like, let's say we're getting our body ready for a competition, or we're trying to get to a certain goal. That's a strategy that every elite athlete uses, which is periodization, which is they go for bouts of intense training mixed with adequate rest, and they try and basically schedule it out to optimize, right? You're not, if you train at 100% or even 90% all the time, then you're actually going to be making negative gains, right? What you want to do is you kind of want to go hard and then go easy, and then go hard and then go easy. And you kind of, it's like, it's a symbol for life, right? Like, that's how everything works.
And that easy, in, I guess, our analogy is that taking a break, looking back and saying, acknowledging it, thinking about what's next, right? Because he had talked about that, adjusting goals, and you move, and he's like, okay, now you look back, tweak it a little bit, and you go, and then you tweak it a little bit, and then you go, right? Because how are you supposed to now know where you'll be that far down the line?
And you change as a person.
Exactly.
You change as a person, right? Like, you can't be setting a goal for 10 years down the line, and then, you know, 2 years down the line, you think that you're going to be the same person as who you were when you started. Yeah, exactly. That was a 10-year goal. Fine, you can set that. But then you have to check in. You have to check in and see, is it still, I'm now a different person. Is this still a relevant goal for me?
I mean, likely it still will be, but the target will just have shifted a little bit.
Yeah, maybe shifted a little bit. Like, maybe it stayed the same. Nobody knows. But, like, that was a really good point in the interview that I liked as well, which is that you kind of have to check in periodically. Don't just commit to something and then think that, because sometimes we get that idea, it's like, just because I committed to a certain thing, I have to, like, live or die by it, you know? And sometimes I've done that where I was like, okay, I'm going to commit to something, and then I overextend my stay.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like the pride did not let me just call it quits, right? Like fantastic example was when I did a pescatarian diet for 6 months. It's like, okay, I'm gonna do it for 6 months, and probably 3 months in, I realized like, you know, like this is an okay diet. You know, it wasn't necessarily for me. Like, did it help a little bit, perhaps for a short while, but then long term didn't really benefit from it. Instead of just saying, okay, you know what, I tried it, I recognize it, and then stopping it, I kind of like tried to force it till the end, which just wasn't a good call. You know, it just wasn't a good call. That's it.
You're like, hey man, I said 6 months. I'm doing 6 months.
No, exactly, right? That was my idea. It's like, okay, I said 6 months. I have to do 6 months or else.
But it's like, hey,
I'm a quitter.
I'm changed. This isn't necessarily doing what I thought it might.
Yeah.
So be it.
Right. So
and I guess that also moves into the next part, which is like being careful about how you measure goals. And I guess, yeah, that's it, right? How you measure goals is something that's, I guess, crucial and important, right? Like with that one, you said, okay, this goal is successful if and only if I do 6 months.
Yeah. What's your yardstick? This is really what it's asking. What is the yardstick that you're using to measure your goal, right?
Is saying, hey, I did it for 6 months, is that reasonable? Or is it, hey, feeling some change or seeing how this plays with me, and if there's no change?
And I feel like the best yardsticks are always the intrinsic ones, right? It's like, okay, I'm doing this for a specific, this practice is to build my own self-discipline, right? So if that's what it is, then you do it, and then you kind of measure, did this help with my self-discipline or not at all?
Yeah.
Not at all. Okay, maybe I need to readjust. Or it could be this confidence or communication or but I feel like the intrinsic ones, I feel like when the yardstick is an extrinsic factor, it's an outward factor, then that's when it all falls apart.
Well, because you had the timeline, right? You had 6 months.
Right?
Realistically, you could have just, okay, maybe 3 months is more realistic,
Like
right? Because you got that internal
6 months is arbitrary.
fixing. Yeah, exactly.
It has nothing.
Because you fixed that internal stuff,
Yeah.
but you just kept going.
And what are like a lot of extrinsic factors that guide a lot of the things that we do, which I think, like, yeah, exactly. An arbitrary time, an arbitrary amount, like money, like $10,000, $100,000, $1 million.
Working for X amount of hours, doing whatever this.
Right?
Yeah.
Social validation, right? I need people to tell me that I'm doing a good job. If people don't tell me I'm doing a good job, then am I really doing a good job?
Yeah.
Right? Like status or
being reviews,
like power, right? Like power, like, oh, I want to be able to command 100 people, or like I want to be the lead of 50 people.
Like even this, getting 1,000 subscribers.
Yeah, completely arbitrary.
Yeah.
Right? But like that is a yardstick that is used. This many views, this many subscribers, this many things. Those are all outward things. Not necessarily wrong to use these things, but they should be used, I think, like as a sprinkle on the cake.
Well, they're like an initial guide
not the
to then be adjusted,
whatever.
right? Like the pescatarian diet, 6 months. That was the initial guide to do what? To self-control.
Yeah.
You reached it sooner than 6 months? Okay, completed. You're good. You have that.
Yeah,
With
or
the-
did
with
it
the
even
views?
do that?
With the views, with the subscribers things, what is it? We're using that to get so-called larger individuals on.
Yeah.
Why don't we just say, hey, aim for some bigger authors, aim for some people that are harder to get people that are we would previously consider to be difficult.
Yeah.
That's really what that is. But we're putting this number on something that doesn't necessarily have a number.
Yeah.
Right?
Maybe it's just a reframing, right? Like maybe, yeah, the goal is right, but we're looking at the wrong element of it. You know what I'm
like
saying?
1,000 subscribers. In theory, it's right because it would lead to that, lead to getting bigger people, getting more eyes on it. But
yeah, being able to do bigger things, whatever.
Getting larger creators on it would then lead to more people watching it, not necessarily.
Yeah, getting the message out there to more people. But it's like we skip the important things, which is, connecting with meaning or, profound people, in the community, getting the message out to more people, spreading,
Well, even increasing
certain
our
kind of
own knowledge
awareness,
base, right?
increasing our own knowledge base. Like, those are the important things. A subscriber count that's high may help you to get that.
We're using that by way of getting these things, which are then underneath it, hiding it.
You're right.
Or hiding beneath the subscribers.
Yeah, and I think like if the entire focus is always on the extrinsic, then ultimately the goal is unsustained.
It's at more risk of failure.
More risk of failure, and then like decreased satisfaction when achieved.
Well, I think numbers are less linear than those intrinsic things. I think if you look at the extrinsic things, they're not very linear, right? They're exponential usually.
Yeah.
But the internal things, if you look at it, usually they tend to be more linear than those extrinsic
and
things.
how you see them too. So
Exactly.
a lot more malleable.
Yeah.
Right? Because a lot of the extrinsic things, like maybe you don't have control over that.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of times you don't have control over that.
Yeah.
But the intrinsic things, you could have a certain degree of control over that, or at least you could build towards it and know that it would give some kind of return ultimately.
Like, ironically, we'll end off with this: the subscriber thing, and leading to getting bigger creators on it, or authors, or more individuals, I guess, because right now it's volume might be part of our issue. If maybe the issue isn't getting the subscribers, it's pumping out enough emails, getting enough volume out there. You could be measuring this one thing that has absolutely nothing to do with what you really want it to be doing. You're putting this number value on something that has no reason to be there. Mm-hmm. That doesn't even correlate whatsoever with the other thing. You put your work in another way to get to that intrinsic goal, which would be to gain more valuable knowledge. Put more effort into getting to more people to then gain that thing, as opposed to focusing on numbers.
Yeah. It's like establish the yardstick with the things that matter the most, right? Don't establish the yardstick with things that you think might matter or ultimately don't even matter.
Yeah.
Very, very important. But great interview with MBS is his initials. That's what he calls himself.
Yeah.
Be sure to follow him on all of his various social media things. Watch the full interview. It was a great interview. They covered a whole bunch of topics, and be sure to buy his book, How to Begin. It's a pretty cool book because it actually takes you through the process of goal setting. So you actually write in the book, right?
Yeah,
it
starts with setting your own goal and then walks you through the other steps to actually get started on that path. So really awesome read. Doesn't take that long, but really the more you put into it, the more you'll get out of it. So the longer time you put in, the more realistic the things you'll get out of it will be, the more helpful they'll be. Yeah,
great self-reflection to do there, which is always really great, and I'm always for that. But anyways, thank you guys so much for tuning into today's podcast, today's episode. Be sure to follow us, subscribe, comment, share it, leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, do all that good stuff. We'll catch you guys next week for another interview.